I want a divorce. The words I'd been holding back for years finally spilled from my lips. Grayson's eyes widened in shock before narrowing into a condescending glare. You'll never make it without me, Aspen. You're nothing but a pathetic housewife. But he had no idea of the strength and resilience I'd been cultivating behind closed doors. It was time to show him what this pathetic housewife was truly made of. I looked around our immaculate living room, the result of countless hours I'd spent cleaning and decorating to create the perfect facade. Willow, our 12-year-old daughter, sat on the couch, her eyes darting between us, sensing the tension that had been building for years. Grayson, I've tried to make this work, but I can't do it anymore. The constant belittling, the lack of support, the way you dismiss Willow's feelings, it's too much. He scoffed. Oh, please, you're just being dramatic. You know you can't handle life without me. Who's going to pay the bills? Who's going to take care of Willow while you're off playing with your little hobby? I felt a surge of anger. It's not a hobby, Grayson. It's my passion. And I've been selling my jewelry online. I have savings and I can support myself and Willow just fine. Willow spoke up, her voice trembling slightly. Mom's really good at making jewelry, Dad. People love her designs. Grayson shot her a sharp look. Stay out of this, Willow. You don't understand adult matters. I stepped in front of Willow, shielding her from Grayson's harsh words. Don't talk to her like that. She's more perceptive than you give her credit for. Grayson rolled his eyes. Whatever. You think you can just walk away from our marriage? You're nothing without me, Aspen. You'll come crawling back in a week, begging me to take you back. I stood tall, looking him directly in the eye. No, Grayson, I won't. I'm done with your emotional abuse, your lies, and your complete disregard for our family. I want a divorce, and I'm not backing down. He threw his hands up in exasperation. Fine. You want a divorce? You'll get one. But don't come crying to me when you realize how hard it is out there on your own. With that, he stormed out of the room, slamming the door behind him. Willow rushed into my arms, hugging me tightly. I'm proud of you, Mom. You're so brave. I held her close, fighting back tears. Thank you, sweetie. We're going to be okay. I promise. As we stood there embracing in the middle of the living room, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but for the first time in years, I felt a glimmer of hope. I was ready to face whatever challenges came my way, knowing that I had the strength and resilience to build a better life for Willow and myself. The next morning, I woke up early, determined to maintain a sense of normalcy for Willow. I prepared breakfast and helped her get ready for school, all while trying to ignore the dull ache in my chest. As I watched her leave, I couldn't help but feel a pang of guilt. Was I doing the right thing? Disrupting our family like this? I pushed the thought aside and focused on my daily chores. As I tidied up the house, my mind wandered to my handcrafted jewelry. It had started as a simple hobby, a way to express my creativity and find a sense of purpose outside of being a wife and mother. But as I spent more time designing and creating, I realized that it was more than just a pastime. It was a passion. I made my way to the small studio I had set up in the spare bedroom, my sanctuary amidst the chaos of my crumbling marriage. As I worked on a new piece, I lost myself in the process, finding solace in the delicate beads and intricate designs. Hours passed, and I was startled by the sound of the front door slamming shut. Grayson was home, and from the heavy footsteps echoing through the house, I could tell he was in a foul mood. I stepped out of my studio, bracing myself for the inevitable confrontation. Grayson stood in the living room, his face twisted in anger. What's this? I hear about you selling your little trinkets online. I straightened my spine, refusing to be intimidated. They're not trinkets, Grayson. They're handcrafted jewelry pieces, and people appreciate them. He let out a harsh laugh. Appreciate them? Who would want to buy that junk? You're delusional if you think you can make a living off of that. It's not junk, I countered, my voice steady despite the anger bubbling inside me, and I'm not trying to make a living off of it. It's something I enjoy, something that makes me happy. Grayson sneered. Happy? You should be happy being a wife and mother. That's your job, not wasting time on some ridiculous hobby. I felt my temper flare. It's not a waste of time, and it's not ridiculous. Why can't you just support me in something that brings me joy? Because it's pointless, he shouted. You're a housewife, Aspen. Your place is here, taking care of our home and our daughter. Speaking of Willow, have you seen how introverted she's becoming? That's on you. You're failing as a mother. His words cut deep, but I refused to let him see how much they hurt. Willow is a bright, creative girl. She's not introverted, she's introspective, and I'm doing my best to support her and nurture her talents. Grayson shook his head in disgust. Whatever. I don't have time for this. I have to pack for my business trip. I frowned. Business trip? You didn't mention any trip. It came up last minute, he said, avoiding my gaze. I'll be gone for a few days. But Willow's dance recital is tomorrow night. You promised you'd be there. He waved his hand dismissively. I can't help it if work comes up. She'll have other recitals. I watched in disbelief as he walked away, leaving me standing alone in the living room. The realization hit me like a ton of bricks. Grayson would always put his own needs and desires above our family. He would never change, never be the supportive, loving husband and father we needed. As I heard him rummaging through the closet, packing his suitcase, I felt a renewed sense of determination. I would not let him break me. I would not let him destroy the happiness and confidence I had worked so hard to build. With or without him, I would find a way to create a better life for Willow and myself. The morning of Grayson's business trip arrived, and the tension in the house was palpable. Willow sat at the kitchen table, picking at her breakfast, her eyes fixed on her father as he hurried around the house gathering his belongings. Dad, are you going on this trip with your secretary? Willow asked, her voice cutting through the silence. Grayson froze, his hand hovering over his suitcase. What? No, of course not. Why would you even ask that? Willow shrugged, her gaze unwavering. I don't know. It just seems like you spend a lot of time with her. I watched the exchange, my heart racing. I had suspected Grayson's infidelity for months, but I had never had the courage to confront him. Now, hearing the accusation from our daughter's lips, I felt a mix of fear and anger. Grayson's face reddened and he slammed his suitcase shut. I don't have time for these ridiculous accusations. I have a plane to catch. He grabbed his bag and headed for the door, not even bothering to say goodbye to Willow. I followed him, my mind reeling. Grayson, wait, I called out, my voice trembling. We need to talk about this. He spun around, his eyes flashing with anger. There's nothing to talk about, Aspen. I'm not having an affair with my secretary. Willow's just being a nosy kid. I stood my ground, my hands clenched at my sides. She's not being nosy. She's observant, and she's worried about our family. Can't you see that? Grayson scoffed. What I see is a child who doesn't know when to keep her mouth shut, and a wife who's too weak to control her. His words hit me like a slap in the face. I opened my mouth to respond, but he was already out the door, slamming it behind him. I turned back to the kitchen, my heart heavy. Willow sat at the table, her eyes brimming with tears. I rushed to her side, pulling her into a tight embrace. I'm sorry, Mom, she whispered, her voice muffled against my shirt. I didn't mean to cause trouble. I stroked her hair, fighting back my own tears. You didn't cause trouble, sweetie. You were brave to speak up. We held each other for a long moment, finding comfort in the warmth of our embrace. When we finally pulled apart, I looked into Willow's eyes, seeing a wisdom beyond her years. Listen to me, Willow, I said, my voice firm. You have nothing to apologize for. You're a smart, intuitive girl, and I'm so proud of you. She gave me a watery smile. Thanks, Mom. I just wish Dad could see that too. I sighed, my heart aching for my daughter. I know, sweetie, but we can't control how your dad behaves. All we can do is be there for each other and stay strong. Willow nodded, her face set with determination. I'll always be here for you, Mom, no matter what. I hugged her again, feeling a surge of love and gratitude. In that moment, I knew that no matter what challenges we faced, Willow and I would face them together. As the day wore on, I couldn't shake the feeling of unease that had settled over me. Grayson's defensive reaction to Willow's accusation, coupled with his abrupt departure, left me with a sinking suspicion that there was more to the story than he was letting on. I tried to distract myself with household chores and my jewelry making, but my mind kept drifting back to the confrontation. I knew I couldn't ignore my instincts any longer. It was time to find out the truth, no matter how painful it might be. With a heavy heart and a determined spirit, I began to plan my next move. I would not let Grayson's lies and deceit destroy our family. I would fight for the truth, for myself, and for Willow. 3 days later, Grayson returned from his business trip, looking tired and irritable. I had spent the past few days stewing in my own suspicions, and I was determined to confront him about Willow's accusation. As he walked through the door, I met him in the foyer, my arms crossed over my chest. "How was your trip?" I asked, my voice tight. Grayson shrugged, setting his suitcase down. "Fine, just a lot of meetings and presentations." I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the conversation ahead. "Grayson, we need to talk about what Willow said before you left." He rolled his eyes, brushing past me. "Not this again. I told you, there's nothing going on between me and my secretary." I followed him into the living room, my anger rising. "I want to believe you, but your reaction to Willow's question was so defensive. It made me wonder if there's more to the story." Grayson spun around, his face twisted in anger. "Are you accusing me of something, Aspen? Because I don't appreciate being called a liar in my own home." Before I could respond, the doorbell rang. I frowned, not expecting any visitors. I made my way to the door, Grayson following close behind. When I opened the door, I was surprised to see Ethan, Grayson's best friend, standing on the porch. He looked uncomfortable, shifting his weight from foot to foot. "Ethan, what are you doing here?" Grayson asked, his voice laced with annoyance. Ethan glanced at me, then back at Grayson. "I need to talk to you both. It's important." I stepped aside, allowing him to enter. We made our way to the living room, an awkward silence hanging in the air. Once we were seated, Ethan cleared his throat. "I didn't want to get involved, but I can't keep quiet any longer. Grayson, I know about your affair with your secretary." Grayson's face paled, and I felt my heart drop into my stomach. "What are you talking about, Ethan?" he asked, his voice shaking. Ethan pulled out his phone, scrolling through it. "I have proof. Text messages between you two, talking about your secret getaways and how much you miss each other." He handed the phone to me, and I read through the messages, my hands trembling. The words blurred before my eyes, but I could make out enough to know that Ethan was telling the truth. I looked up at Grayson, tears streaming down my face. "How could you do this to us, to our family?" Grayson's face contorted in anger. "It's not what it looks like, Aspen. She's been pursuing me for months, sending me inappropriate messages. I've been trying to fend her off, but she won't take no for an answer." Ethan shook his head, disgust evident on his face. "That's not what the messages say, Grayson. You've been an active participant in this affair. You've been lying to Aspen and Willow for over a year." I felt like I was going to be sick. The room spun around me, and I gripped the arm of the couch for support. Grayson stood up, his fists clenched at his sides. "You had no right to get involved, Ethan. This is between me and Aspen." Ethan stood his ground, his voice firm. "I had every right. You're my best friend, Grayson. But what you're doing is wrong. Aspen and Willow deserve better than this." Grayson opened his mouth to respond, but before he could, Willow appeared in the doorway, her face pale. "Is it true, Dad? Are you cheating on Mom?" The room fell silent, the weight of Willow's question hanging in the air. I watched as Grayson's face crumpled, the truth finally catching up with him. In that moment, I knew our lives would never be the same. The betrayal cut deep, but it also sparked a fire within me. I would not let Grayson's lies and deceit destroy me. I would fight for my daughter, for my own happiness, and for the justice we deserved. Grayson stood frozen, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. I watched as he struggled to find the words to defend himself, to spin another lie that would get him out of this mess. "Willow, sweetie, it's not what you think," he said, his voice sickly sweet. "Your mom and I are just going through a rough patch, and my secretary has been a good friend to me. That's all." Willow's eyes narrowed, and I could see the anger and hurt burning within them. "A good friend? Is that why you're always texting her and going on secret trips with her?" Grayson's face reddened, and he took a step towards Willow. "You don't understand, Willow. You're too young to know what goes on in adult relationships." I stepped between them, shielding Willow from Grayson's advancing form. "Don't you dare try to blame this on her age, Grayson. She's old enough to know the difference between right and wrong, and what you've done is wrong." Ethan spoke up, his voice firm. "Grayson, just admit it. You've been caught, and there's no way to spin this. You need to take responsibility for your actions." Grayson's eyes darted between the three of us, and I could see the panic setting in. He was like a cornered animal, desperate to find a way out. "Fine, you want the truth?" he spat, his voice venomous. "Yes, I've been seeing my secretary. But it's only because you've been so distant, Aspen. You're always wrapped up in your stupid jewelry or catering to Willow's every need. What about my needs?" I felt like I had been slapped. How dare he try to blame his infidelity on me? On our daughter? Willow stepped out from behind me, her face set with determination. "That's not true, Dad. Mom has always been there for us, even when you weren't. She's the one who comes to my recitals and helps me with my homework. Where have you been?" Grayson's face twisted in anger. "I've been working, Willow, trying to provide for this family, but apparently that's not good enough for you or your mother." Ethan shook his head, his expression one of disgust. "Working? Is that what you call sleeping with your secretary? You're a real piece of work, Grayson." Grayson rounded on Ethan, his fists clenched at his sides. "You stay out of this, Ethan. This is none of your business." Ethan stood his ground, his voice calm but firm. "It became my business when you started lying to your wife and daughter, when you betrayed their trust and broke your vows." I watched as Grayson's shoulders slumped, the fight draining out of him. He looked like a man who had been caught in a trap of his own making. "I never meant for it to go this far," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "It just happened, and I couldn't stop it." I felt a wave of anger wash over me. "Couldn't stop it? You made a choice, Grayson. A choice to betray me, to betray our family, and now you have to face the consequences." Ethan nodded, his face set with resolve. "I can't be friends with someone who would do this to his own family, Grayson. I'm done with you." With that, Ethan turned and walked out of the room, leaving Grayson standing alone, his head bowed in shame. I turned to Willow, pulling her into a tight embrace. "I'm so sorry you had to see this, sweetie, but I promise we'll get through this together." Willow hugged me back, her small frame shaking with sobs. "I love you, Mom, and I'm proud of you for standing up to him." I felt a surge of strength flow through me. With Willow by my side and the truth finally out in the open, I knew I could face whatever challenges lay ahead. Grayson's betrayal had broken our family, but it had also shown me the depths of my own resilience. And I would not let him break me. In the days that followed Ethan's revelation, I felt a newfound sense of strength and determination. Grayson's betrayal had shattered my heart, but it had also awakened a fire within me. I refused to let him break me, to let him win. I sat across from Grayson at the kitchen table, my divorce papers spread out before us. He looked haggard, his eyes bloodshot and his face unshaven. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. "I want a divorce, Grayson," I said, my voice steady and calm. "I won't let you hurt me or Willow anymore." Grayson scoffed, leaning back in his chair. "A divorce? You can't be serious, Aspen. You'll never make it on your own. You're just a housewife with a hobby." I felt a surge of anger at his dismissive tone. "That's where you're wrong, Grayson. My jewelry making is more than just a hobby. It's a thriving business." He raised an eyebrow, a smirk playing at the corners of his mouth. "A thriving business? Don't make me laugh. You sell a few trinkets online, and you think you're some kind of entrepreneur?" I leaned forward, my eyes locked on his. "My pieces are being featured in a popular online boutique. I have customers from all over the country, and the orders keep coming in." Grayson's smirk faltered, and I could see a flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. "That's impossible. You're lying." I pulled out my phone, opening up the boutique's website. "See for yourself. My pieces are selling out faster than I can make them." He grabbed the phone, scrolling through the page with a furrowed brow. I watched as realization dawned on his face, followed quickly by anger. "So what?" he spat, tossing the phone back on the table. "You think you can support yourself and Willow with your little arts and crafts project?" I sat back in my chair, a smile playing at the corners of my mouth. "I know I can, Grayson. I've been saving money from my sales, and I have enough to cover our expenses for several months." His face reddened, and he slammed his fist on the table. "You've been hiding money from me? You deceitful..." I flinched at his outburst, but I refused to back down. I hid it because I knew this day would come. I knew I would need a safety net to protect myself and Willow from your lies and manipulation. Grayson's eyes narrowed, and he leaned forward, his voice low and menacing. You think you're so clever, don't you? But you're forgetting one thing, Aspen. I'm the one with the power here. I'm the breadwinner, the one with the connections. I'll bury you in court and you'll be left with nothing. I met his gaze, my voice calm and measured. Go ahead and try, Grayson. But remember, I have proof of your infidelity. I have witnesses who can testify to your betrayal. And I have a daughter who sees you for who you really are. At the mention of Willow, Grayson's face paled. He knew she was his weakness, the one person who could see through his lies and manipulations. You've turned her against me, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. You've poisoned her mind with your lies. I shook my head, a sad smile on my face. I didn't turn her against you, Grayson. You did that all on your own. She sees the truth, just like I do. Grayson stood up, his chair scraping against the floor. This isn't over, Aspen. You'll regret the day you crossed me. With that, he stormed out of the room, slamming the door behind him. I sat at the table, my heart racing and my hands shaking. But beneath the fear and the anger, I felt a glimmer of hope. I had stood up to Grayson, had shown him that I was stronger than he ever gave me credit for. And with Willow by my side, I knew I could face whatever challenges lay ahead. We would rebuild our lives, piece by piece, until we were whole again. And Grayson would be nothing more than a distant memory, a cautionary tale of what happens when you let greed and selfishness consume you. Grayson stared at me, his eyes wide with disbelief. You can't be serious, Aspen? You really think you can make it on your own, with your little jewelry business? I stood my ground, my voice steady and calm. I am serious, Grayson. I've been saving money from my jewelry sales for months now. I have enough to cover our expenses for a while until I can get back on my feet. He scoffed, shaking his head. You've been hiding money from me? You sneaky little... I cut him off, my anger rising. I hid it because I knew I would need it someday. I knew that I couldn't rely on you to take care of us, not after everything you've done. Grayson's face twisted in anger, and he took a step towards me. Everything I've done? I've been working my ass off to provide for this family, Aspen. And this is the thanks I get? I let out a bitter laugh. Working? Is that what you call sleeping with your secretary? You've been providing for her, maybe, but not for us. He flinched at my words, but quickly recovered, his eyes narrowing. You know what I think, Aspen? I think you're the one who's been cheating. I bet you've been sleeping with Ethan behind my back, haven't you? I felt like I had been slapped. How dare he accuse me of infidelity after everything he had done? You're delusional, Grayson. Ethan is your friend, not mine. And unlike you, I actually take my marriage vows seriously. Grayson opened his mouth to respond, but before he could, Willow walked into the room, her face set with determination. Mom's not cheating on you, Dad, she said, her voice steady and calm. She's been working hard to build her business, to make something of herself, something that you never supported her in. Grayson's face reddened, and he turned to Willow, his voice low and menacing. Stay out of this, Willow. You don't know what you're talking about. But Willow stood her ground, her chin lifted in defiance. I know more than you think, Dad. I'm the one who encouraged Mom to start selling her jewelry online. I'm the one who helped her set up her website and social media accounts. I felt a surge of pride at Willow's words. She had been my rock throughout this whole ordeal, my one source of unwavering support. Grayson's face twisted in anger, and he took a step towards Willow. You did what? You went behind my back? Helped your mother deceive me? I stepped between them, shielding Willow from his rage. She didn't deceive you, Grayson. She supported me, believed in me, something that you never did. Grayson's shoulders slumped, and for a moment I saw a flicker of defeat in his eyes. But it was quickly replaced by a cold, hard anger. Fine, he spat, grabbing his coat from the back of the chair. You want a divorce? You'll get one. But don't come crying to me when you realize how hard it is out there on your own. With that, he stormed out of the house, slamming the door behind him. I stood there, my heart racing and my hands shaking. But beneath the fear and the anger, I felt a sense of relief. It was over. The lies, the betrayal, the constant fear of what he might do next. Willow walked over to me, wrapping her arms around my waist. I'm so proud of you, Mom, she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. You're so brave, so strong. I hugged her back, feeling a surge of love and gratitude. I couldn't have done it without you, sweetie. You gave me the courage to stand up to him, to fight for what I deserve." We stood there for a long moment, holding each other tight. And in that moment, I knew that we would be okay. We had each other, and we had the strength and resilience to rebuild our lives, one piece at a time. Grayson may have broken our family, but he hadn't broken us. We were survivors, warriors, and we would come out of this stronger than ever before. In the weeks that followed Grayson's departure, Willow and I settled into a new routine. Without the constant tension and fear that had pervaded our lives for so long, we found ourselves laughing more, sharing more, and enjoying each other's company in a way that we hadn't in years. I threw myself into my jewelry business, pouring my heart and soul into every piece I created. And with Willow's help, my online store began to thrive. Orders poured in from all over the country, and I found myself working long hours to keep up with the demand. But it was worth it. For the first time in my life, I felt truly independent, truly in control of my own destiny. And I knew that I had Willow to thank for that. One evening, as we sat together on the couch, watching a movie and munching on popcorn, Willow turned to me with a serious expression on her face. "Mom, do you think Dad will ever change?" she asked, her voice small and uncertain. I paused, considering my words carefully. "I don't know, sweetie. People can change, but they have to want to. And right now, I don't think your dad is ready to face the truth about himself." Willow nodded, her eyes sad. "I miss him sometimes," she admitted. "But then I remember all the things he did, all the ways he hurt us, and I feel angry all over again." I wrapped my arm around her shoulders, pulling her close. "It's okay to feel both of those things, Willow. Your dad was a big part of your life, and it's natural to miss him. But you also have every right to be angry, to want better for yourself." She leaned her head on my shoulder, and we sat in silence for a long moment. And then, as if on cue, my phone buzzed with an incoming text message. I glanced at the screen, my heart skipping a beat when I saw Grayson's name. With trembling fingers, I opened the message. "Aspen, I need to see you," it read. "Please, can we talk?" I felt a surge of anger wash over me. How dare he reach out to me now after everything he had done? But beneath the anger, I felt a flicker of curiosity. What could he possibly have to say to me now? I showed the message to Willow, and she frowned. "You don't owe him anything, Mom," she said, her voice firm. "You don't have to see him if you don't want to." I nodded, knowing she was right, but some small part of me wanted to hear what he had to say, wanted to see the look on his face when he realized just how much I had changed. "I'll meet with him," I said, my voice steady, "but on my terms, and with you by my side." Willow's eyes widened in surprise, but she nodded, a small smile playing at the corners of her mouth. The next day, we met Grayson at a coffee shop downtown. He looked haggard, his eyes bloodshot, and his face unshaven. When he saw us walking towards him, he stood up, his hands trembling at his sides. "Aspen," he said, his voice hoarse. "Thank you for coming." I sat down across from him, Willow by my side. "What do you want, Grayson?" I asked, my voice cold. He took a deep breath, his eyes filling with tears. "I want to apologize," he said, his voice breaking, "for everything. I know I've been a terrible husband, a terrible father. I let my own selfish desires consume me, and I hurt the two people I love most in the world." I felt a flicker of sympathy, but I pushed it down. "And what about your secretary?" I asked, my voice sharp. "Are you still seeing her?" He shook his head, his eyes downcast. "No. I ended things with her. I realized that I was chasing something that wasn't real, something that could never make me happy." I nodded, my heart heavy. "I'm glad you realized that, Grayson. But it doesn't change what you did. It doesn't erase the pain you caused." He nodded, his shoulders slumping. "I know, and I know I can't ask for your forgiveness, but I wanted you to know that I'm sorry, truly sorry, and that I'm going to do everything I can to be a better man, a better father to Willow." I glanced at Willow, saw the hope and the fear mingled in her eyes, and I knew that, no matter what had happened between Grayson and me, she still needed her father in her life. "I hope you mean that, Grayson," I said, my voice softening. "For Willow's sake, if not for mine." He nodded, his eyes filling with tears. "I do, I promise." We left the coffee shop that day with a tentative truce, a fragile hope for the future. And as Willow and I walked hand in hand down the street, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. We had survived the worst of the storm, and we had come out stronger on the other side. And whatever challenges lay ahead, I knew that we would face them together, as a family.